case you had trouble following along in class, of the Mold Day 2 demo. So what we did is we started off by making the actual part itself. The part is in English units, so I selected a new ANSI part. What the part looks like is it has a disc and then a square on the bottom, which you can see in the handout. The way I prefer to make things is I prefer to be in ordered mode. So I go to Tools, Ordered. So I like to draw in ordered mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by making that disc right on the XY plane. Somehow that was down there. So on this plane. So I'm going to draw the disc first, which was 3 inches. Make sure it's in the center. So 3 and hit enter. And what this disc is going to do is it's going to go down 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125. This is half of the total 1/4 inch. Then it wants to know which side. I'm going to put it on bottom. Cool, so that looks fine there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a square on the bottom. So I'm holding down the middle mouse key to do that move. So I'm going to put a square on this plane. I'm going to use the rectangle by center. So I want it centered up right in the middle again. And I'm going to make it 1.5 by 1.5 with a 0 degree. And as soon as I hit enter, it's all set. And what I want to do is I want to stretch that down 2 inches. So I just type in 2 and hit enter. Of course, the side, you want the bottom. So that's kind of the basic extrudes we're going to do. We are going to add a few more details. We're going to add draft. So I'm going to select my draft tool. The first thing that draft wants is it wants to know the reference plane, so the plane that's not going to change. I'm going to draft only the square, so I'm not going to draft this cylinder. This square has a reference plane shown right here, so I'm going to click here as my reference plane. And then the things I want to draft are all these outside edges. So I want to draft all these guys. The degree, 5 degrees, that sounds good. We're not really machining this thing, so 5 degrees will be just fine. And so now I've got them all draft selected, and then I say add draft, and it wants to know, do you want to put that draft this way, which we do, or this way, which would be ridiculous. So select this direction, and I can say finished. So now I've got a draft on the square. I could also draft this angle right here. In general, the rules for draft, if it's going to be more than 0.1 inch, you typically want to draft it. This is 0.125. Turns out I'm going to actually do some things to cut this in half, so I'm not going to draft it. So I'm going to leave that undrafted for right now. Alright, so let's add some more things. Some more things that we're going to add are these edges here. You can imagine this would be down in a mold, so this edge, so they have to be rounded because they're going to get cut with a tool that's going to have a radius. So really this is where you kind of meet the real world and you say what size tool could actually get in there. To be honest, most tools we have in the shop won't go down a full 2 inches, but let's pretend like a 3/8 would work. Nice thing about SolidEdge is you can just type in, so 0.375, that's a 3/8, and then the radius I'm just going to say divided by 2 and hit enter. So I like that you can type in simple math equations. So we're going to round all these edges. And then also for aesthetic reasons, those have to be rounded, right? For aesthetic reasons, I'm also going to choose to round these with the same radius. It will also help us later because since this is rounded from here to here, a chain will smoothly go over this radius, so it will actually help us some in the modeling as well. So I'm going to say check mark to that, and then you can click on preview and finish. It feels like there's some extra steps that are there. In addition to that radius, I would also like to radius this edge right here. So I'm going to, it selected radius for me, which is great. This one could be about any radius. There's no requirements. I'm going to put on a 1/16 radius just because I picked it, right? Nothing special about that. So I'm going to put it on right there, and I'm going to check that. So those are the important things to do for looks, and it's also going to help us because it's now the smooth thing. A chain will go over a smooth radius. Cool, so almost there, making progress. Big issue is the fact that it's still a solid chunk, right? So obviously, oh, I should finish off this last radius. So a solid chunk will not work, right? So that's a no-go. So what we want to do is we want to make it a thin piece that has a uniform wall thickness. There's actually a nice trick for that. It's called thin wall. What thin wall lets you do, there are kind of 3 steps. You define the thickness, and then you decide which face is going to get removed. So this face in the bottom is going to get removed, and then it'll do it. So first, the thickness. For the parts that we use, we'll typically use, like, I don't know, 50 thousandths to 70 thousandths is a common thickness we'll use, 70 being kind of the most common. For this, we're not going to really machine it anyway, so I'm going to use 100 thousandths. So I'm going to just hit enter, and you can watch it'll move to the next step as soon as I hit enter. So now it moved to the next step. So now select which face you want to kind of remove. So I'm going to remove this face, and that's the only one I want to kind of remove. And you can preview what it'll leave you with, which is kind of cool. So you can click on finish there. So this is one way to thin things down. It also, depending on what you're doing, you might manually just create like lofted cutouts, but thin wall is a nice trick. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this part. I don't know, we'll call it, let's make a folder called video. And in this folder called video, I'll call it mold day 2 parts. So we could be done if we wanted, but instead I'm going to show you one more little trick, tons of little tricks. And that is this piece is going to match up with the one above it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little groove on this side and a little lip on the one above, just so they have a little bit more surface area when I'm gluing them together. It's also a chance just to show you another little trick. So there's a command called lip. Lip can be used to make a lip or a groove, if you read the comment there. We're going to use it to make a groove right now. So the first thing you need to do is you need to click on the edge that's going to get this lip or groove. So I'm going to pick on this edge. And that's the only edge, so I'm going to say select. And I'm going to type in 0.05, 0.05. And now it should show you somewhere on your part a little yellow square. This yellow square lets you decide, do you want a lip here, do you want a lip here, or do you want a groove right here? So as you move your mouse, it'll move with you. So this side we want a groove. So I'm going to click on groove right there. Cool. And so now our part's finished. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in ISO, make it tape up the whole thing, and I'm going to save it. So this is the part that we would like to create a mold from. So we're going to use this as our part. And so now we probably ought to make a mold. So I'm going to say new. I'm just going to click on new and then select ANSI part. Now last time what we did is we created 2 molds, and then we subtracted out the part from the top and we subtracted out for the part from the bottom. This time we're going to do what's kind of a more common task, and that is we're going to make both molds here, subtract it out once, and then divide the mold in 2. And that's kind of the most common task you'll do for your projects. So let's go ahead and start off by making the mold itself. I prefer ordered mode, so the first thing I do when I create a new part is I switch into ordered mode, which is kind of like use old SolidEdge. I'm going to make an extruded rectangle. In my make-believe world, my plates are 4x4 wide, so I'm going to make a 4x4 square on the XY plane. So I'm going to make a square, which is 4x4 and a 0 angle. And so instead of extending it, so last time we made a top and bottom that were 3 inches, we'll do that again. Instead of extending it one way 3 inches, I'm going to actually make both molds together. I'm going to click on this symmetric extent, and I'm going to make a total of 6 inches. So I'm just going to type 6 and hit enter. So this is kind of both the top and the bottom molds. So I'm going to save it with a name like that. So I'm going to call it Mold Day 2, both molds. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is we want to cut a part out of the middle of this. It is going to be hard to see what's going on. So just for giggles, I'm going to switch to one of these where you can see like a wireframe of it, or you can do the hidden edge. Alright, so we've got our mold ready. What we want to do is we want to insert a part copy. So that button is over here in the home toolbar. So I'm going to insert my other parts. So I'm going to insert this part. And then you can select what plane you want it to be on. Oops, my window is off the screen here. So you can select what coordinate system you would like for it to be on. We're just going to hit OK. It's not on the screen. And so I'm just going to put it at the default location. If you do want to move it to a different coordinate system, you can create those by creating a new coordinate system. And then when you bring it in, you can just put it on that coordinate system. So if you have something that's not centered, you can move it to a different coordinate system. I'll let you figure that out. It's actually fairly easy. You typically just key in a coordinate system. Like let's say I wanted it moved over 2 by 2. You know, it would make a new coordinate system out there for me. I don't want that for this, but I thought I'd show you that because some people do use that, put it in a different spot in your mold technique. Alright, so let's go ahead and do some more steps. The first thing we need to do is subtract, oops, let me hit escape so I'm out of this surface thing. I want to subtract that body from this body. So at present it's like double solid in there, right? We want to use a boolean subtraction. I'm not sure why, but boolean is hidden within the surfacing area, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but it's okay. So we're going to do a boolean subtraction. We're going to make sure we're selecting a body. So we're going to select this body, and we're going to make sure that subtract is selected, and we're going to say OK. Finish. So it didn't look like anything happened there, but something did happen. And what happened is that's now air in that space. One way you can see it is with this clipping planes. So I put it back to the gray. And you can set a thing called clipping planes, which is like, you know, temporarily hide what's outside of my clipping planes just so I can see what's in the middle. And you can see that if you look in here really closely, it actually did create air in that area. So that's pretty exciting, I know. You can turn the clipping planes back off. And so it is air. So that's good. How do we cut this thing in two, though? So what we really need to do, the hard part is how do we cut this thing in two? What we need to do is we need to create a surface that evenly divides it. If we just created a surface that was just like one plane coming through here, that would fail because it would put like this little core that's on the bottom on the top. So what we need to do is we need to create a surface that like comes along the outsides and then like follows it down along the bottom, follows it back up, and comes out here. So that's our plan. We're going to build that in a couple steps. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and we're going to do step 1. So step number 1, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my reference planes here because I'm going to click on one of them in a second. We're going to start off by making kind of like a plane that's kind of shown like this. Instead of using this exact plane, though, we're gonna actually use where this lip connects right there. So let's go ahead and start drawing. So what I want to do is I want to create a new surface. You're probably not familiar with surfaces. We didn't use them in GraphCom, but the concepts are quite similar. Instead of making a 3D thing, you're going to make a 2D surface. So I'm going to click on Extruded Surface. Since I'm in ordered mode, the next thing it wants is it wants me to pick a plane. I'm going to pick this plane right here. Nope. I'm going to pick that plane right there. So I'm going to pick the front plane. You could also pick the right plane, the XY or the YZ. Sorry, XZ or YZ. I'm going to pick front. Now what I want to do is I want to start by making just a line. So I'm going to make just a line. I'm going to make sure it's horizontal. I'm going to hit escape so that I don't have to make more lines. Now what I want to do is I want to put this line right on the bottom of my groove. A couple ways you can do it. What I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to choose to add a collinear relationship. So I click collinear and I say make this line collinear to this line. There's a lot of lines in here, so make sure you get the right one. So this line collinear to this line. Not sure if that helped any by zooming in, but that guy. So it snapped it down. The length on the outside doesn't matter, just make sure it goes beyond the box. So that's my sketch. Next thing we can do is we can make a plane. I'm going to choose to do a symmetric, so it goes out each way. It doesn't matter how wide you go, but do something that's bigger than the box, right? So there you go. I'm going to click right here, and that's bigger than the box. So I'm going to say finished. If you want the view to look prettier, you can switch to the shaded version, and you can see that it made this nice, pretty surface. You can see this nice, pretty purple surface goes outside the box on all sides. Great. If we were to use this simple thing as our parting line, it would work out badly because, like I said, that core that's in the middle would go on bottom where we don't want that. So we've got to come up with some way to kind of cleverly follow the outside of that part. It's actually not as hard as you might guess. There's a way you can copy a surface. So I'm going to click on the copy button. I'm going to also switch my view back to this little wireframe. Alright, so back in here. So I want to copy, instead of single, I want to select chain. The difference is single, I'll just show you. So if I hover and then right click, single will let me pick like an individual face, right? That would take a lot of work to do every individual face. I'm going to use chain. What chain does is if something has a rounded corner and it kind of like smoothly goes from one surface to another, it'll automatically combine them, which is going to work out very nicely. So you can see that here's the face that I want. This is the outside of the part. So you can see it kind of goes around the outside of the little air vacuum. Make sure that you do not select this one. So if you look at the bottom here, which is the top of the part, you can see that this is the inside. That would be bad. So we want the outside. Also, I happen to know how chain works, and I know that chain like smoothly went around this corner for us because we had a round there, smoothly went around that one because we had a round there, but it will not go to the top because it's not smooth there. So I'm actually going to select the top now, and I'm going to include it. So not this one, yes, this one. So I'm going to include it as well in my copy. So I'm going to say, yep, those are the parts I want. Click on Finish. So it doesn't look like much happened, but there are, of course, tricks that you can view things. I'm going to put it back into the shaded mode. So there is a surface down in there. One good way to see it is to right-click on it and say Show Only. You could also hold down Control and click on multiple things and make those show onlys. So this is the copy we made. You can see that I got the top hat, and here's the surface that I made as well. So we're getting there. This almost divides the part in two. The only problem is this area up here, this circle, shouldn't be there, right? So it should be flat out here, that's good. Then it should go down, along, come back up. But this little inside the circle is bad. So we're getting there, but we need to trim away the inside of that circle. No surprise, a lot of nice tricks within the surfacing area. One of them is trim. So we're going to do a trim. So I'm going to say trim. Then I'm going to read my thing. So it says, you know, click on a body. So great, we're going to click on this body. Surfaces are bodies too. That's the only thing we want to trim. So we say, yep, trim. Then it says trim along. So when we trim along, I'm going to select chain. I think body would work too. I'm going to say I want to trim along using this guy. So this, what's it called, a face set copy. That's the only thing that I need to do my trimming with. So I'm going to trim this extruded one using this guy. So I say check. Last part of trim is which side do you want to trim? Do you want to trim away the outside and leave just the circle? Or do you want to trim away the inside and take away the circle? We want to trim away the inside. So cool. And so I can say finished. So now we've got a trimmed extruded surface and a copy, and now they make a smooth, continuous surface. A lot of little ways to go wrong, but if you did it right, they should like pretty much come together perfectly here, and you know, pretty much come together perfectly on the bottom as well, right? So they should kind of come together just superific. If something didn't come together just superific, you might have to go back and redo an earlier step, but they should come together superific. Last thing we need to do so that we can use this as a single like combined surface is we need to stitch them together, because one's an extrude, the other's a copy. I want to stitch the two together, so I'm going to say stitched. So it creates a construction by stitching together multiple surfaces. Throws up a pop-up box, which I don't find useful. It basically says how far are you willing to stitch things together. The default is fine. And I want to stitch together this extrude to this part copy. So I'm going to click on each of them here. Alright, I was trying to click on them in the tree, but it worked out better if I just clicked on them in the actual part. So you can see it turned them green. I want to stitch these together, check, and finish. So now if I right click on the, oops, let me click on select. If I right click on the trim and I say show only the stitch, you can see I've got a nice continuous surface. Whew, that was the hard part. Don't worry. I'm going to save it now that I've done the hard part. Now what we need to do is we need to cut this thing in two. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say show the design body again. So put it back on. Great. Now I'm going to do something new. I'm going to go to divide part. Divide part is just below boolean. That does kind of make sense, and it's in the surfacing area, which is fine. So I'm going to divide the part. If you didn't save it, it will prompt you to save it right here. And so what the divide part's asking me to do is select the surface to divide the part. So the surface I want to use is this stitch surface. I find it easiest just to select it out of the parts tree here. So that's the surface I want to use. Next thing it's going to ask me is, you know, do I want to keep the top or do I want to keep the bottom? Turns out this choice doesn't actually matter. So click on whichever direction you want. I'm going to say bottom. Great. Because it lets you save the other half as well, right? So here's the bottom and then there's the top. The way this works is you're actually going to create some new files. So I'm going to create a new file called mold day 2 bottom mold. And I'm going to call this one right here mold day 2 top mold. So I've given them names. And then the way this box works, I find this annoying. It only saves the ones that are selected. Fortunately, there's a select all, so they all got selected, and then save selected. So it's actually creating those parts, and you can see that they got made, and the status is that, hey, they got made. So at this point, you can actually just close down your open parts if you would like. Instead of closing it, I'm just going to minimize them. And you can go open the new parts that just got made. So if we click on open, we should have made a bottom mold. So open him. And so he is the bottom half only, which is kind of cool. And then we should have also made a top mold. Now the top mold we will need to do just a little bit of editing on, because if you look at it closely, it's now taller than 3 inches total. That's no big deal. It's easy to cut it down later, right? And that's just an abnormality if we said it was 6, but then it had a protrusion, so I got longer than 3. No big deal. I'm just going to cut away the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a cutaway. I'm just going to put a cutaway line on the front. Lots of ways to do cutaways. I'm just going to make a line that's horizontal. And I'm going to say make your distance from here down to there be exactly 3 inches. So that looks lovely. Now it's asking me which side do you want to cut away. I want to cut away the top. And I'm going to do what's it? Okay, that was weird. Like, didn't want me to cut them both away at the same time. I guess if I had it to do it again, I would have put the line on the outside of the part instead of the middle. No biggie. There you go. Cut them off. So I just did that just to make it possible to actually get this thing at 3 inches. So this thing's going to be like at the top of our mold, which is great. And then the other one is going to be the bottom of our mold. Technically, I think this guy is not quite 3 inches. I can measure it, I'm sure. I'm not really that worried about it. If I click on the inspector, smart measure that line. So it looks like it's 50 thousandths short. I guess that's not shocking. If you wanted to add 50 thousandths to this guy, you definitely could. So you can make an extrude on this plane. There are clever ways to copy from one thing to another. Just because I don't feel like remembering what they are, I'm just going to draw it. And so if I wanted to make it another 0.05, there you go. Cool. And so now this is the bottom mold plate. Some things kind of looked weird there, so I'm going to inspect it again. And to be honest, if it worked or not, I must not be able to type. It's closer. Somehow it got a slight error. Did I not extend it the right length? Oh, you know what? It was doing a symmetric extend, wasn't it? Alright, turn off symmetric extend. Now 0.05. Gotcha. So it did half of it, which I knew something looked weird. There we go. So now it's 3 inches. Great. All right. So with that, we're done. This is an example of using a surface to divide your mold plate in two. Your homework is to do the other half. So we kind of did one half. We did the top square here. Your job in the homework is to do the cylinder side. So I guess we did the bottom square. So you have to make the cylinder. Hopefully you can see the advantages of what this tool can do for you. It's kind of slick and it's very useful when you're making molds. All right, that's it.